Committee members, please take your seats. Committee members, please take your seats. Okay, we will move to our next panel. Each presenter will have 7 minutes to conclude their deputation, and after that we will have 39 minutes for questions and answers. So we will start with Ontario Energy Association. Please keep quiet, and members of the committee, take your seats. Ontario Energy Association, please introduce yourself and your title.
There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Namir Rahman. I'm the Director of Policy for the Ontario Energy Association, and it gives me great pleasure to talk about Bill 40, the Protect Ontarians by Securing Affordable Energy Act. The OEA is supportive of Bill 40, and our suggestions align with the government's overall goal of promoting economic growth in Ontario. We are facing an unprecedented economic challenge, and the only path forward is cooperation and hard work. Our members, who are tasked with keeping the lights on, homes warmed, and the engines of industry running, understand this better than anyone. In a province the size of France and Spain combined, and people forget how big Ontario is, with a tenth of the population, our members provide gas, electricity, and thermal resources on a continental scale that are both affordable and reliable. We understand Bill 40 in that context of a government seeking to grow our economy, maintain our quality of life, and create future opportunity. It is in that spirit that we offer our comments today, and we're focused on 3 things. 1, enabling low-carbon resources. 2, approaching infrastructure holistically. And 3, targeted funding to unlock deeper savings. Some of the most affordable energy resources on the electricity side right now are distributed energy resources, DERs. Many excellent steps have been taken by this government so far to enable them, the largest of which is the $11 billion commitment for demand-side management programs. And that will offset, by our measure, $22 billion worth of capital expenditure that we would have had to have done if DSM wasn't available. In addition, privately owned companies like Enwave, through initiatives like district heating, are providing partners with efficient electrification, and their partners include LDCs like Toronto Hydro. But the one thing that we want to say is that the system as we know it right now isn't fully optimized to extract the full value of current and future DERs. We have DERs on the megawatt scale sitting idle due to contractual, structural, and market access issues, but could provide whole system efficiencies. The inability to value stack, the IESO's exclusivity provisions and bulk system programs, and the lack of secondary and local markets means that there are no avenues to leverage these resources or deploy new ones. We recommend that the government support quick, voluntary deployment of utility-led local flexibility markets to create and unlock this latent potential. We also recommend the modification of IESO's contractual provisions, such as the exclusivity clause, to ensure DERs can value stack their services. On the infrastructure side, we wanted to use this opportunity to talk about the importance of energy assets in supporting economic growth. And in particular, we want to talk about special economic zones referenced in Bill 6, which is cross-referenced in Bill 40. As the government pushes forward to enable regional planning and economic development, the enabling infrastructure needed includes energy assets. If a remote region is to be declared an SEZ, then the government and lead agencies need to talk to both gas and electricity system providers as soon as possible about service delivery needed to support that growth. This is particularly important if the project requires long lead time assets such as transformer stations, and I think many of you know that it's a 3 to 5 year wait to get transformers right now. Furthermore, if the assets require build-out from connection points outside the SEZ, then normal planning processes will hinder the build-out to support the SEZ. As such, we recommend that the SEZ designation be applied to the entirety of the dependent energy assets to expedite service delivery. Though thought needs to be given to the funding and cost recovery mechanisms, especially if the asset build-outs exceed the economic valuation test for the project. We would also recommend taking a holistic approach to infrastructure planning, such as the creation of a master plan to bundle gas, electricity, fiber, and other assets necessary to support economic growth. For example, as highways are being planned, parallel rights-of-way should be automatically secured to safely situate these assets. These measures would be in line with the one-window approach that the government has taken for large and high-value projects right now. On the funding side, we'd like to say that as the government progresses with its plan to enable economic growth, we would like to make a case for very targeted funding, either from the province or by supporting federal engagement. We have 3 clear examples where targeted funding now by the government can unlock billions of dollars of benefits. Example 1, our members are currently working on developing local flexibility markets and the next step in LDC operations called Distribution System Operator. This will unlock access to latent DERs within the grid by offering new market capabilities and functionalities. Relatively modest investments would help establish foundational infrastructure that would enable the proliferation of affordable DERs benefiting customers and the overall energy system. Example 2, capital markets currently cannot price small-scale commercial DER projects or accurately assess the risk. Enabling funding in the low tens of millions of dollars can have a disproportionately large impact in stabilizing commercial-scale DER projects by moving them from the pilot scale to whole-of-system benefit type projects. We ask that the government support targeted Canadian Infrastructure Bank funding, higher upfront capital eligibility, and ITC eligibility for these projects. Ontario One Call's underground infrastructure mapping initiative is a very good example of how targeted funding can bring about benefits for asset owners. In conclusion, the OEA is supportive of Bill 40, and our suggestions align with the government's goals of enabling Ontario's economy. We hope it is received by all in the cooperative spirit in which it is intended, and I look forward to answering all of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presenter is the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. We have with us Karen Nesbitt in person, and we have Spencer Sandor virtually. So go ahead, Karen.
Thank you so much,
Please
Mr.
state
Chair.
your name, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. My name is Karen Nesbitt. I'm the Policy and GR Director at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, which I'll be referring to as AMO, and I'm joined by my colleague Spencer Sandor, who's AMO's Senior Advisor on Land Use Planning, Energy, and Economic Development. Thank you so much for the opportunity to address the committee today. Just by way of context, I'd like to start out by sharing that the municipal sector is committed to working with the province, as well as energy partners, to deliver clean, reliable, and affordable energy. AMO advocates for an electricity system that supports economic growth, energy sovereignty, and the national interest. We are pleased the province has been responsive to our calls for advocacy, working with municipal and energy sectors to find coordinated solutions to grow Ontario's energy supply while also protecting municipal interests. I'll now move into AMO's feedback on the legislation under discussion today, Bill 40. AMO supports the changes Bill 40 proposes for the Electricity Act and the Ontario Energy Board Act that would embed economic growth as a consideration for the IESO and Ontario Energy Board's decision-making processes. This is an important step to ensure the agencies coordinating our electricity system are working to align their planning with the ambitious economic growth that municipalities, Ontario, and Canada are all working to deliver. Our shared economic success relies on being able to deliver electricity when and where it's needed for projects to proceed. Building on the theme of protecting our shared economic success, I'll focus my remarks today on Bill 40's proposed framework for prioritizing the connection of large load facilities to the electric grid. So first, a point of clarification. The bill uses the term specified load facilities. My comments today will primarily reference data centers. We understand this term currently applies to data centers, but could be expanded later to include any high electrical demand facility. Our feedback applies equally if that definition expands. Municipal governments are experiencing an increase in data center proposals. This coincides with historic growth in housing and economic development, all placing immense pressure on our electrical distribution and transmission systems. Modern data centers, especially those powering AI, can require as much as a small city in electricity. Now is the time for the provincial government to provide leadership, as it's doing with this bill, to set a clear framework to protect the ability of municipalities to balance competing priorities to access electricity in our grid and as we grow. In this context, we welcome this legislation and the new data center prioritization framework. This mechanism enables necessary strategic decisions about competing electricity demands. The goal is to safeguard top priorities like new housing and economic growth from being unduly constrained by data center development. AMO support for this bill is based on the understanding that this framework does not prioritize data center connections over growth projects. Instead, it seeks to coordinate and rationalize electrical connections for all growth and trade-enabling priorities that municipalities are working hard to deliver in partnership with provincial and federal governments. This includes new housing, hospitals, manufacturing centers, critical mineral extraction and processing, among others, and including future projects of provincial and national importance. This brings me to AMO's advice on large load framework design. Protecting utility capacity for growth is the most important consideration. We also recognize that domestic data centers can offer strategic opportunities to improve Canada's data sovereignty, cybersecurity, and employment opportunities, especially in the high-tech sector. Data centers that bring these benefits forward should be prioritized. Competing draws in electricity isn't the only issue either. Many proposed data centers rely on local water or wastewater services for cooling, creating similar capacity impacts on key local utilities. For these reasons, we support the bill's creation of a reg-making authority to set criteria for conditions for proposed data centers before connecting to the grid. Municipalities support restricting or prohibiting data center connections where doing so would adversely limit the ability for utility capacity needed to support and power existing residents, businesses, and enable growth. Finally, the preamble to Bill 40 includes a commitment to, and I quote, supporting the responsible growth of energy-intensive industries like data centers that align with Ontario's economic priorities and benefit local communities. However, the bill itself doesn't have any authorities to ensure local approvals or local benefits are accrued. While we recognize that increasing the use of digital and AI-based solutions presents strategic federal and provincial opportunities, local benefits like job creation are limited compared to traditional economic projects. Simply put, the benefits of data centers are more likely to be provincial or federal, while potential costs and trade-offs are mainly fall to the host municipalities. So given this, we strongly recommend the government implement the bill in a way that achieves the three following outcomes. One, maintains local approvals for data centers, for example, land use planning, infrastructure service connections, or other development approvals. Two, prioritizes local benefit, giving extra points to projects that can demonstrate economic benefits will accrue directly to the host community. And three, features a collaborative process for determining whether the connection requirements authorized by the bill are met, what local approvals are needed, and what benefits host communities can expect. This process should include the province, project proponents, municipalities, and utility partners together. So overall, AMO supports the bill and the principles that the proposed framework for data center connections presents. This framework provides a critical mechanism to make sure we can advance Ontario's digital advantage without sacrificing other important priority growth opportunities. Importantly, we are also encouraging the Ministry of Energy and Mines to take note of our comments in today's meeting to inform the enabling regulations should this bill receive royal assent. AMO municipalities look forward to continuing to work with the government to coordinate Ontario's growth and ensure residents and businesses continue to have access to clean, reliable, and affordable energy for decades to come. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Our third presenter is Energy Storage Canada. Please identify yourself, and you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to appear today. My name is Andrew Teal, Vice President of Policy and Government Affairs at Energy Storage Canada. At Energy Storage Canada, we represent over 115 members from across the energy storage value chain. This includes developers, technology providers, utilities, and investors, all of which are committed to delivering a clean, reliable, and affordable power to Ontario's electricity system. Demand for electricity is growing, driven not just by electrification and industry, but increasingly by the digital economy. Data center demand alone could potentially represent about 13% of Ontario's electricity needs by 2035, representing a structural shift in our load profile. This is both a major economic opportunity and a potential system challenge. As we all know, data centers can bring high-value jobs, spur innovation, and strengthen Ontario's competitiveness, but they also introduce new characteristics to the grid: large continuous baseload demand, high sensitivity to power quality, and significant local capacity impacts. ESC was very pleased to see the government's decision to address these potential new grid characteristics proactively through Bill 40 and the creation of a clear and predictable framework for connecting these new digital loads. ESC fundamentally believes that the successful connection of large loads like data centers require three things: prioritizing projects that deliver economic, strategic, and local benefits, that ensure responsible, sustainable, and reliable growth, and three, focus on Ontario's energy security and our leadership in the digital economy. To do this effectively, a framework that manages connection requests transparently and ensures the highest value projects move forward is essential. Ultimately, the success of this framework will depend on a few things, most namely flexibility. Data centers need it, the grid needs it, and Ontario's energy system will require more of it as demand grows. That is why energy storage is both an essential tool in the province's approach to data centers and its energy future. All energy storage systems, including both battery energy storage systems, long-duration storage, and others, offer practical and immediate solutions to the many challenges associated with large digital loads like data centers. 1, they offer operational reliability and power quality. 2, they allow for load management and cost control through peak shaving and load shifting. 3, they offer resilience and grid support. What this means is that storage enables data centers to operate during larger outages, providing ancillary services and reduce strain on the broader system. And lastly, storage also supports sustainability and emissions reduction. These benefits make storage not only an operational asset for data system operators, but a system asset for Ontario and its data center planning. That is why, when it comes to Bill 40, ESC is largely supportive of the goals of government. As data centers scale up in Ontario, the key is making sure that we have the right policy levers in place so that the system that we all use can adapt effectively. This includes taking a fresh look at how we work with corporate PPAs, how we integrate and leverage behind-the-meter resources, and most importantly, making sure that moving forward, we implement a transparent, predictable, and understandable approval criteria. A clear scoring framework that rewards projects with storage, that offer load flexibility, and that deliver real regional benefits, especially in northern and rural communities, would give everyone a fair and consistent process to access the system. This would also signal to developers what's expected up front and help Ontario attract the kind of projects that would strengthen the grid while contributing to its broader economic goals. From a policy framework level, ESC is particularly supportive of the bill's focus on northern and rural regional development. Pairing data centers, especially with storage, can create regional energy hubs. This, from our perspective, is critical to attracting new investment, enhancing reliability, and anchoring distributed energy generation and storage infrastructure further within the Ontario energy system. Another piece of this is making sure that storage is fully integrated into how we assess and connect these new large loads. For example, large data centers, potentially those over 50 megawatts, it may be reasonable to ask proponents to show that they have on-site or contracted storage that aligns with their expected demands. This kind of requirement would help new growth fit within the system's capacity limits and ensure that the broader system does not suffer reliability constraints under this new unexpected strain. Together, these types of updated measures can ensure that when data centers arrive, that we're set up with modern, flexible tools that keep the costs down, keep reliability up, and make sure that clean energy is and continues to be accessible to everyone across the province. There is no doubt that Ontario is entering a potentially new era of economic growth fueled by digital infrastructure, electrification, and clean energy investment. We believe at ESC that Bill 40 is an important step to ensuring that this growth not only strengthens our reliability, affordability, and competitiveness, but also strengthens the broader system as a whole. From our perspective, energy storage provides the flexibility, resilience, and operational certainty that data centers will require and enable the grid to accommodate this new growth in load. Energy storage, through my presence here today, appreciates the opportunity to participate in this process. We look forward to working with you and others moving forward. And thank you for the time. I welcome any questions.
Thank you. We will start the first round of questioning. We will start with the government side, MPP Cazzetto.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank all three presenters for being here. But I'd like to ask Karen this question here. As being the director at AMO, you've heard pretty well a lot about energy needs, energy affordability, and overall impressions on Bill 40 and the government's direction in securing affordable energy for the future.
Thank you so much. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll be pleased to answer that question. Certainly, affordability is a top priority for our members, same as working towards a clean and reliable energy grid. And we would see this legislation as fitting into a series of provincial legislation that's come forward across the last year, including the Integrated Energy Plan, that certainly upholds the objective of affordability and puts plans around it to achieve that. I think there are three elements: reliable, affordable, clean. AMO continues to advocate in all three fronts. Thank you.
Okay. I'll pass it on then. Go ahead.
MPP Gallagher-Murphy.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, thank you very much, everyone, for being here this afternoon and all your comments. My question will go to Namir of the OEA. We heard some numbers, and I think it was Andrew, you mentioned some numbers. Data centers are projected to account for 13% of new electricity demand and 4% of Ontario's total electricity demand by 2035. So when we think about that and we think about other jurisdictions, specifically like those in Texas, BC, and California, who have already introduced measures to manage the growth of these data centers, the specific impact on them. When I think about that, and I also think about what could happen in the future as well, because I know the northern U.S. states are talking about how they can move those data centers north into the cooler weather next to our Great Lakes, obviously for important reasons. My question to you is, what are your thoughts on Ontario taking similar regulatory steps that these other jurisdictions have already taken?
I think when you do jurisdictional research, you're going to find a lot of examples of a lot of other jurisdictions doing their own thing, and I think what we need really is a little bit of a made-in-Ontario solution that fits our economic needs and our economic aspirations. And I can give you a very simple example. An AI-driven economy, a digital-first economy, will rely on data centers. And I think when you take a look at data centers, you have to really look at it as foundational investments in that space. So the real question is, how are we situating ourselves in that broader economic context? And that's a question I don't think we have grappled with fully yet. if you have D&D data center needs, for example, or if you have your AI researchers that have data center needs, how are we layering in that thinking with our data center strategy? The other element that we need to think about isn't just the electricity component, but it's also the fiber access component and the water component. And when we talk about northern or rural communities, fiber access is going to be the big question. Can we situate them there? So I would say that we've got a broader question in terms of how data centers support our future digital-first economy, and then how do we build out our assets, whether it's water, fiber, electricity, to support that goal. And I think we need to do a bit more work in that. We do have eStructures, which is one of Canada's largest data center providers, as one of our members. So we're engaged in active conversations with them as to how we can do that. So I wouldn't necessarily look at other jurisdictions. I would say, what do we need? Where do we want to go? And then how can we best achieve that? And a chunk of that is going to be an infrastructure-driven question. I would argue that there are municipal concerns that have to be addressed in terms of whether you're going to have a hospital, the MUSH sector, municipalities, universities, schools, hospitals, or housing. How does the planning framework take into that, at least the electricity planning framework? Can you confirm capacity? Do we need capacity confirmed above a certain load level, approvals? So there are a number of steps that could be taken that could really bring about a Made in Ontario solution.
I like that. Thank you, Namir. I think thinking strictly Ontario, what we can do, I love that, because really that's what our government message is. Ontario made, Ontario jobs.
Exactly.
How can we be focused? Thank you very much. I appreciate those comments.
MPP Pinsonala.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to the presenters for taking time out of your busy days to be part of this process. This question's for Karen or Spencer. Would you consider streamlining municipal franchise agreements a good thing for rural municipalities who look to expand natural gas in their communities?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd be pleased to answer that question. So I think a good starting point is to acknowledge that AMO represents all 444 municipalities across the province, so I'll just use that as the framework for my response. As you know, Municipal Franchises Act relates to natural gas utilities. The needs and impacts of natural gas really differ from community to community across the province. And while some communities are seeking expansion and investment, others are seeking moratoriums for increase in that infrastructure. Where we are seeing a desire for expansion, a lot of the drivers around looking for cleaner alternatives for energy, for affordability, and to support growth in a financially economical way. AMO's position as an organization and from our members is that it's essential that any changes to expand the natural gas network.
Karen, the time is up. We will move to the third part, official opposition, MPP West.
Thank you, Chair. Karen, if you'd like to finish, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to offer that we would want transparency on pricing for energy, whether it's natural gas, but also against alternatives to inform choices by the consumer on the ground. Thank you. In short, AMO's agnostic on energy type. Thanks.
Okay. I'll stick with AMO. I'll probably say you, but I know that you're speaking on behalf of your members, so don't take it as your specific opinion. So you partially answered this, but I just want to get clarity on it. You were talking about trying to balance data centers versus housing needs and water supply for data centers. And so Bill 40 does give a lot of power to Cabinet to make certain decisions. Do you feel like there's sufficient guardrails to ensure that municipalities are being listened to if decisions are being made about large power centers or anything like that?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, pleased to answer. This is why AMO is providing advice to the province around the enabling regulations that really bring the framework into effect and make it real. And there we're seeking a formal role for municipalities as part of these large load projects to ensure that we can have comprehensive integrated decision making around what projects make sense where, including factoring in the capacity of local utilities to support both the community and these proposing projects.
Right. And then, so is that something that you would make sense as a recommendation we'd bring forward as an amendment, or?
AMO was pleased to see the legislation provide a framework for prioritizing these projects, and we are comfortable to have that feedback addressed through regulation.
Okay. Yeah, and I just think, in my head, I think of like decisions are easy to make at a provincial level, but it's municipal mayors, Reeves Council that wear it. If power goes out, they don't care. They're the people at the municipal level are the ones who are most visible in the community. And so I want to ensure that there's as much feedback as possible, because you know your communities better than I do. With the 440 members, I'm sure most of us couldn't list all of your members. I'm not trying to insult anyone. I'm just saying you know your business better than we do, like everyone who comes to speak with us. You had 3 recommendations. Are they in the package, or can you? I wrote down the first one, but I typed really slowly. All I have is maintain local approvals, and then I ran out and just made a note to ask you to repeat them.
Absolutely. So we're seeking 3 things. Maintain local municipal approvals. To your point, it takes a village, and the municipality needs to play a key role in that village around project proposals. 2, prioritizes local benefits. So some projects, like they're apples and oranges, some employ people at construction stage and then really nobody else.
Right. That
doesn't create much spin-off economic benefit for the communities around there. Others create a lot of high-value, high-tech jobs. So it's important to evaluate proposals around their merits. And we would suggest giving extra points to those projects that provide extra value to the local community that hosts them. And then 3, that really it's all about that collaboration. We're looking for a formal role around the province, project proponents, municipalities, and utility partners to come together around these very high impact proposals to make the right informed decisions together.
Thank you for that. I'm going to go to Andrew at Energy Storage. It's going to jump around a little bit just because our time is so short. I don't know if you were here for the earlier people who were speaking, but I was trying to learn more about the energy storage side. And some of the conversation we had was these large data centers, could it be renewables? And part of that was about the need for storage. So I did a quick Google search. So I don't know how accurate this is, but they're talking about data centers taking between 1 and 10 megawatts. And I don't know if that's yearly, monthly, or what. So in terms of data storage, what area are we looking at for batteries if there was, I don't know, a week of darkness and no wind or something like that? I don't know. Whatever, you probably know how to measure it better than I do.
Yeah, so I think the kind of clear distinction or kind of key point that I would want to emphasize is that storage is like bacon. It goes with every type of electricity resource, whether that be nuclear, wind, solar, or what have you. We store electrons. And whether those electrons are generated through renewable resources or nuclear assets, we move load around. And what storage offers fundamentally is flexibility. So in periods where there is a potential shortage of renewable energy on the grid, we do have the ability to store other resources. And if I take a project example specifically that was built here in Ontario in the last year, the Oneida Energy Storage Project that was connected to the grid in June, it was charged and discharged 4 times within 1 day, providing reliability services. And that stored charge came from all types of resources. Obviously, we tend to program it to prioritize, lower cost resources or renewable resources. But the fact of the matter is that we are able to move load around. And that is the fundamental principle that allows storage to be so successful. So regardless of the connection load required by these data centers, storage is an essential asset as that kind of required backup for reliability services and pairs well with renewables, but also other types of resources.
Okay. I won't have time, but I'll come back to. I'm trying to figure out how much space does a megawatt take, or. Do
you mean in terms of land density?
Yeah.
So in terms of an energy density principle, the 2 most efficient types of resources that exist are nuclear and storage from a actual acreage percentage, right?
Okay.
Storage from that ability to store upwards of 250 megawatts on less than 2 acres of land per se, roughly speaking. Nuclear, I won't comment on that. That's my previous life. But the fundamental principle is that these storage resources actually don't take up a lot of land use asset. And I think the comment that I heard from Canria is that it can fit in a parking spot.
Thank you. The time is up for this round for the official opposition. Now we move to the third party, MPP Sue.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to start with a question for Energy Storage Canada. Andrew, first of all, thanks for to all the witnesses for being here today. I wanted to, you spoke a lot about valuing storage properly on the grid, and you spoke about having a clear scoring criteria, if I got that wording right, for deciding what kinds of projects get connected. So I'm wondering if there are amendments to Bill 40 that you might propose to make sure that there's some explicit language so that when the regulations are made, that storage assets are valued properly, or that if a consumer comes along and wants to connect, but they come with a storage backup, that's taken into account in whatever score they're given when they're competing against another project for connection.
Yeah, I would go back to the comments that I made. I think that when we look at, prioritizing the connection of large data centers, making sure that projects deliver economic, strategic, and local benefits needs to be integrated into that process, and ensuring that the growth is responsible, sustainable, and reliable to the broader system are critical. I think when it comes to developing rated criteria for something like this, there is an extensive process through which that regulation could be developed, and I think commenting further on that at this particular point in time might be too ambitious.
But couldn't, in the bill, you could just say, take into account the flexibility of somebody who wants to connect to the grid, because maybe they have flexibility to load shift, or maybe they have flexibility to add in a larger storage component. I mean, we could put that in the bill, because the bill mentions some other criteria. Why not add in this notion of flexibility?
Yeah, my comments on that, I would echo again. I think that those types of strict additions to the regulation can be made through the process of further defining the bill.
Okay, so you don't see a legislative role in that. You want to do it in regulation? Is that? Do I understand correctly?
That is what I'm proposing. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to go to the Ontario Energy Association, Mr. Rahman. You talked about distributed energy resources, and that our current system is not optimized to take advantage of all the potential distributed energy resources, and you talked about, I believe it was, unlocking them. So I think that is a good thing. But what part, are there any amendments to Bill 40 that you would like to sort of prod the government to move in that direction? Like maybe just mentioning it somewhere in the bill?
I'm not certain it needs to be in the legislation properly, because I do think the overall objective of affordable is handled in the legislation as it is right now. What we're adding is additional commentary in terms of where you could find additional affordability and additional flexibility via distributed energy resources, and offering that path forward as to how that could be achieved. And that may not require specificity within the legislation as right now.
Okay, so I guess I'm just trying to find some relevance for the work that we're doing here today, because we're going to be going through the bill line by line, and I'm just wondering if there's anything. So that's because you're talking to the people who will go through the bills line by line. You're talking separately to the government. So why don't you just go and talk to the government and not come here? I'm trying to find out why I'm getting paid to do this job.
So we do talk to the government as much as we can. We try and talk to whoever is going to listen. If we thought that a legislative amendment had a role to play here, we would happily forward that as a proposal. Okay. That's just not something that we have right now. We have in the past for other pieces of legislation. We've put our recommendations forward. That's just not the case right now. If my members come back to me in the next couple of days and say, hey, or in the next 24 hours and say, hey, by the way, we think this should be changed or that should be changed, then I'm more than happy to put something forward. But I haven't anticipated that as a part of the process.
All right, thank you. It's a bit of a concern of mine, and putting you a bit on the spot to
No,
try to
that's
answer
perfect.
this
It's
sort of
perfectly
very
fine.
general
Yeah,
concern that I have that you write a vague piece of legislation and then everything else goes into regulation, in which case you need to send your lobbyist to go and talk to the government. Like, that's just, I worry about relying too much on that process. I'm not asking you to answer that question, but I just wanted to put it on the record why I'm asking this question. So
I understand that.
I'm
Thank you.
not asking you to answer that question. But another question I want to ask is about
1 minute.
the need to, I think it's important to prioritize connections to the grid, the projects that have the highest value. But the legislation contains a term. It's economic growth consistent with the policies of the Government of Ontario. Why not just have something that's more specific and doesn't depend on the government of the day, like productivity growth? Would you support do you think it's a bad idea to change that and just say productivity growth or per capita economic growth instead of consistent with the policies of the Government of Ontario? Because we don't know what that is.
I think
Wouldn't a business be sort of uncertain about what that means?
I think productivity growth is a very difficult subject to link to energy policy in general, because now you're asking, for example, you've got residential connections, thousands of homes need.
Thank you very much. That concludes the first round. We will move to the second round. MPP Vickers from the government side.
Thank you, Sharon. My first quick question to you, Andrew. I wrote down 250 megawatts on 2.5 acres or hectares?
I'd have to double check the exact, but it is a small land footprint. I don't quote me. I'm not quoting exact numbers. I'm not pulling from a reference in front of me for that, but it is a small percentage of land. Like the Oneida project specifically, again, this is why Google's great. You can just look things up and double check. But in this particular context, what I'm saying is from an energy density perspective, it is a very small land footprint. Like,
Yeah, and the person before talked about 1.5 parking spots, and I don't know how big the parking spots are where he is, but 2.5 acres. I don't know how many people know what 2.5 acres look like, but that's a big parking spot.
Yeah.
So, but my question actually is, energy storage. We talk about battery storage a lot. We've never really talked about pump storage.
Yep.
And I don't know whether you have an opinion on that, on between the two. But my question is whether it's battery storage or pump water storage, how does that contribute to the goals outlined in Bill 40, particularly around the grid stability and long-term energy affordability?
Yeah, I think so. So at Energy Storage Canada, we represent all types of storage resources, those including BESS, which are your kind of lithium-ion, which most people are most commonly familiar with, pumped gas, pumped air, like compressed air, as well as pumped hydro. So there's fundamentally different types of storage technologies that offer longer duration services based on the needs of the system. And what Ontario and the IESO particularly have determined is that they need both types moving forward. So in Ontario, we've procured roughly 3,000 megawatts of largely BESS, so short duration battery storage, 4 hour in length. But moving forward, what they're looking to deploy is longer lead time assets, like your pumped hydro, like your compressed air and pumped air as well. And the fundamental difference between the two is how long those resources are able to shift the demand profile. So some things like BESS can do 4 to 8 hours. Long duration resources like pumped hydro, compressed gas can do 12 hours plus. And what that allows for is, again, to kind of BESS to meet maybe some of those peak afternoon loads, so that peak shaving opportunity, whereas long duration storages like the Meaford Pump Storage Project would be able to inject that energy over a longer time period, 12 hours plus, into the system. Again, so providing a energy arbitrage ability, but just over a longer time frame. There's fundamental differences in obviously the construction of these projects and makeup of the supply chains and things like that, which are also important. But the key identifier is that in order to support grid reliability and flexibility, you need both types of resources.
Okay, thank you.
Next. 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll just, the Ontario Energy Association. I noticed you were asked a question from my colleague across the floor there about any amendments to the bill, and you said you're very happy with Bill 40 and there would not be any amendments coming from you.
There are no amendments coming from us, not to date. If I receive instructions otherwise from my members, we'll have a conversation about that, and then we will submit whatever we feel is appropriate within the time frame.
So you're supportive of the bill, you're
Yes.
saying? Okay, go ahead.
MPP Dawi.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask a question of Association of Municipalities of Ontario. And part of the bill has the streamlining of municipal franchise agreements. I know of my experience as a councillor, certainly sometimes the right-of-way congestion became an issue. So I wanted to see what your perspective was. Is this a good thing for rural municipalities who are looking to expand natural gas in their communities?
I might redirect this question to my colleague Spencer.
Thank you. I think what I would say is that the agreements under the Municipal Franchise Act are negotiated between the utilities and the municipalities, and they're overseen by the Ontario Energy Board. So where Karen spoke earlier about some communities seeking expansion and others seeking moratoriums, the changes give that flexibility for the municipalities to negotiate with the utilities for what best fits those local needs, and maintaining that OEB oversight keeps that oversight and structure in place. We also know that the OEB is planning to review the model franchise agreement that is used for this in 2026, and we will be working with our sector and the OEB to make sure that those municipal needs are continued to be met through the franchise process.
Okay, thank you. Chair, how much time is left?
1 minute.
1 minute? Okay. Maybe I'll take one more. Just a question for the Ontario Energy Association. I know, like I don't want to say that we're new to the game for data centers, but we've seen the proliferation in the United States. So, what are your thoughts on adopting some of the practices that they have taken on, or are there better ways of introducing the data centers to our mix?
We had a half-day event on energy and data centers earlier this year, and we had people from the States come down, and what we discovered was that they're grappling with exactly the same problems as we are. And not only are they grappling with that, they're also facing forms of public resistance that's rising to the surface right now, but the data center energy consumption is just off the charts at that end. There's something like $2 trillion worth between Meta and OpenAI right now planned by 2035. That's just dollars spent, and that's two companies. So when I say made in Ontario approach, yeah, we could take a look at what's going there, but I think it's more relevant to take a look at things like planning frameworks. So one of the things that we put forward in our suggestion is...
Thank you very much. The time is up. Thank you. We move to the official opposition, MPP West.
Yeah, Namir, I'm interested in your answer if you want to continue.
Yes. So the challenge that we face really is who's going to get priority in a constrained area, and that's a problem we haven't solved fully. I think that's something that the ministry is grappling with right now. And it would be appropriate to come up with a ranking mechanism where you've got schools and hospitals at play or at houses at play, and say that these need to be prioritized. But I see that as a planning framework conversation that needs to happen within that space, rather than something that happens within the legislation or the regulation. If municipalities need, for example, confirmed capacity in a spot vis-a-vis a data center coming up, how do we ensure that confirmed capacity takes priority? That's a planning question. And what are the mechanisms that we can enable municipalities to do that? That's a planning question too. And then we can take a look at even load size. One of our members said anything above 50 megawatts in terms of energy consumption from a data center. We'd like to see an enhanced process, so we'd be supportive of something like that. But the one thing I don't want to frame this as an all or nothing, it's only municipalities, only schools, only houses, or only data centers. I think we need a measured approach, and I think we've got the opportunity to do a measured approach that fits Ontario's economic needs.
In terms of data centers, is the Ontario Energy Association looking at, similar to my colleague, MPP Dowie, comments about, there are some stresses that are happening south of the border where water consumption is going down. Farmers are having a hard time watering their plants because so much water is needed for cooling. the amount of electricity that's going around. I don't know if they're experiencing brownouts, but there's concerns about brownouts and lack of electricity for homeowners who just want to watch Netflix and put something in the microwave. And so, are you working on best practices so that we're moving in the right direction?
So we're working on that space in terms of what that looks like. So. I think when a project proponent comes to an LDC, and they say, hey, we want to put this project up, the first thing that they look at is what the state of the system is, and then they take a look at what the system needs to be to support that project, and then what are the timelines that you're looking at over there, right? So let's say you've got a constrained area and the data center comes by and says, hey, we need 100 megawatts. Well, that's not going to happen in 3 to 5 years. Right. Then there's also the question of water access and fiber access. If you don't have fiber access, you're just not going to have a data center. The water access question is interesting because that really comes down to water rates, because data centers oftentimes soak up a lot of water in the cooling process, but they pay a very discounted rate. So I view that as much more of a rate question than anything else. Are they free riding on the broader infrastructure base? And I do think that could be handled discreetly.
Okay, I appreciate that. You talked about fiber infrastructure, and initially when you were speaking, you were talking about bundling. And lots of conversations lately about nation-building projects. Does it make sense to bundle this infrastructure? I know, I represent Sudbury, but all around me in Greater Sudbury, they don't have access to all the different utilities. They're still on basic, slightly better than dial-up. Some areas just dial-up. Do you think it makes sense that we work towards creating this infrastructure?
Absolutely. So I think it's a fantastic thing for us to do if we're taking a look at energy corridors. It makes sense to take a look at infrastructure corridors in general. The proposal that I've specifically said is if you're building a highway 40 to 70 meters on the side, appropriate the right of way, put that aside for future transmission, for gas, for fibers, etc. Or figure out how much you need to safely bundle all of these together and think about that holistically. That saves you a lot of headaches down the road, rather than thinking of electricity now, gas later, fiber, all of that. Let's do that one window, one approach.
You said as a tunnel, or I don't know what the infrastructure looks like.
So on the transmission side, for example, you need 40 meters on one side of land just for a transmission corridor, right? Right. But if you've got another 20 meters, I'm throwing out a number. I don't know what the appropriate number is.
Yeah, that's okay.
But if you've got another 20 meters on that side, which you've designated for, let's say, gas and fiber, then you're within the same planning framework, integrating the thinking for the full range of assets. And I think that kind of integrated thinking is going to be very important for that connectivity and that productivity growth.
Okay, and this is not related to Bill 40, but just when you were speaking, you said you said it very casually. As we all know, there's a 3 to 5 year wait for transformers. So what is that? Is it just they're complicated to build? The parts are hard to resource? Yeah,
it's the supply chain. It's been like that since COVID. Long lead items right now, like transformers, are 3 to 5 years. If we've got a large project developer that requires a significant, what we call a system expansion, and assets like transformer stations need to be put in place, the first thing they say is we need a deposit right now to guarantee that the assets are going to be in play by the time you're ready to energize.
Wow.
And it is 3 to 5 years, and it's not something that we control.
How much time do I have?
1 minute.
Oh, 1 minute. I wanted to ask Andrew a couple of questions as well. You know what? I won't have time to even get through the question before you'll get cut off in the response. So I'll just concede my time.
Okay. MPP Sue.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things in Bill 40 does is it enables the government to make payments to generators, transmitters, distributors, from monies that are appropriated by the legislature. In other words, it goes on to the government balance sheet, the government debt. And so the net effect of this is to continue something that's been happening, which is to move the cost of energy from the energy bill to the tax bill. But my question is, how do we know if a new payment to one of those three classes of organizations is too much? Like, at some point there has to be some guidelines as to what extent we're going to subsidize the consumer's energy bill, because then you do it too much and you start to get economic distortions. And so my question really is, should the minister tell the legislature why a new payment is made. And I'll give you one example of that where the minister didn't do that. And it has to do with the pumped hydro storage in Meaford, where the government is providing $285 million to do some studies to de-risk the project. Now, I'm a big believer in the importance of energy storage, so I want to see energy storage projects succeed. But my question is, in Bill 40, we have the opportunity to put in a little bit of language to say the minister shall inform the elected people, the MPPs who represent the people of Ontario, why these payments, what's the rationale behind such payments. This is a non-competitive part of the energy procurement process. Or would you agree that the minister should inform the legislature and that we could put this in a little line in Bill 40 to get the ministers to do that?
So
That's a question for all of you. So,
you want me to keep this on? The energy sector is built on openness and transparency, and we're regulated right down to the last $100. So transparency is something that we would always argue, and for the sake of, I guess, public, I don't want to say comfort, but public oversight. If it is public dollars, I would say that transparency is a good thing. But this is a fundamentally new space for us because the energy sector often has been entirely cost recovery in the past, or largely cost recovery. So as to what that process looks like, what monies they're looking to allocate for which type of projects, I have no idea. What the transparency elements would be in that, I would have to ask in terms of regular parliamentary processes what that looks like. If you think your budgetary processes are not transparent enough, that's a broader question around your budgetary processes. But in general, I don't have any amendments to the legislation that we're proposing to add for the time being.
All right. Second question is, I'll direct it towards AMO. There is currently already a competition to connect to the grid where there's not enough supply. And so in Kingston, we regularly, and we keep getting manufacturing companies coming and saying, we are interested in locating in Kingston because you have resources in research and existing industry. But we need some number of megawatts. And we can never answer that question. We can never say yes right away in Kingston. That is a problem. And we are expecting demand. We have a housing shortage, so if we build more housing, we have more demand for electricity from that. We're expecting a new hospital. And there are existing uses, industries that want to expand in Kingston. So my question is whether the AMO would support, in this new world, the ISO being directed by the minister to have extra capacity on hand in places where it's known that we regularly have to turn down manufacturing concerns that are thinking of locating.
Through you, Mr. Chair, pleased to answer that question. Certainly, AMO advocates for that very thing, which is a higher degree of coordination in planning around electricity between the municipality and the electricity system providers and utilities. And this is just because we've come through a luxurious period of having very adequate capacity into now this squeeze on that capacity. And in some of our communities, we know there's insufficient electricity available to meet new demands, whether they're for more housing or economic development opportunities. This is why AMO has been advocating for faster cycles of planning between communities, municipal planning, as well as the energy sector, to bring together the assumptions and expectations and need for where growth is going to happen and what electricity is needed to meet that need. And we were so pleased to see the province bring forward an integrated energy plan earlier this year that included more robust regional planning to do that very thing.
Okay, thank you.
1 minute.
That's all I have, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. That is the time allotted for the second panel. Thank you very much for all three of you, or four of you, for coming and sharing your valuable input with the committee. So you are free to leave, and it will take us a few seconds to prepare to invite the third and final panel to take their place